Have you guys ever owned or wanted to own a car that just doesn't make any sense? A car that is a money pit, depreciates exponentially every year, that is always broken, but you cannot get rid of it and keep giving it more and more money. Well, this is my version of that car. A 2003 Mercedes-Benz S-Class. This specific car is an S430 4MATIC, and I've had this car for a while now, and I absolutely love it. No other car that I've ever owned made me feel the way that this car does. I'm sure you guys can relate to that. And there are a lot of problems with this car. And I'm actually moving to Vancouver, and I am taking this car back, like I always do. Before we take it back, we need to make sure that it actually makes it there. It's a 1,000-kilometer drive, and this car, I haven't driven in like 3 months. So I need to do all the fluids, fix the air suspension of the car. There's a lot of rust on it that I'm going to address later on. In this video, we're going to fix all of those little things up, get this car ready for Vancouver because it's going to be packed with things because I'm moving there again for school. But before we start fixing the car, I need to buy all of the parts that I need for it. I have no clue what's actually broken with it besides one air strut, but I'm sure there's more issues with it. So let's jack up the car and figure out what the rest of the issues are. All right, we got access to the strut. Let's see what's wrong with it and let's change it with a new one. Well, I found where it was leaking from. This whole entire thing just separated where it holds air. So the reason why it was leaking slowly is because when this was compressed all the way, this rubber seal was sealing the system. Most of you watching probably know how the air suspension system works, but if you don't, here's a quick demonstration. Most air suspension systems have an air tank, and once the air tank is depleted, the ECU then kicks on the compressor to put more air into that air tank. Having air in the air tank is vital because this is where the air supply comes from to refill those air suspension struts. And once the air struts lose a little bit of air, the ECU has a solenoid which has 4 valves for each corner of the suspension. So whenever one, for example, is leaking or needs more air, the ECU will then send more air towards that strut. And this system makes it feel like you're riding on a cloud. But as you guys can see, it has a lot of flaws. If one of these components would ever fail, you will lose the whole entire air suspension system, which is why it's so important to keep up with the maintenance of it. Alright, so my plan to take the strut out is by removing the top control arm bolt first. Because it's a 4MATIC, I need to remove, I believe, this C-looking structure thing, or I could just loosen these up and then just remove this. So I'm going to play around with it and look at the new strut of how I'm supposed to do it. And there's one electrical clip, which is one of these clips that I have to remove. And then at the very top of the engine, we have to remove these 3 strut bolts and remove that line, and it should just come down. Most of these suspension components are 23 years old, but I knew that I could take them off, so I bought a ball joint remover to shove in between the ball joint and that arm, and eventually it did come off. Yay! Alright, so it seems like this part does not come with like the C part of the suspension, which means we could just loosen up these 2 bolts right here, which are like the pinch bolts, and then this whole entire thing just slides up, so we do not have to take that out. The strut connector was actually attached to the ABS connector, so once you take out those 2, you have to split them off because only one of them is responsible for the air strut. The bottom pinch bolts were actually really easy to remove, but once you take them off, the strut is only going to be held on from the top 3 bolts, so you can take that off last. Unfortunately, I only had adjustable wrenches for this part, but it worked perfectly fine to remove that line. Sweet! Okay. Now we can just loosen up these 3 bolts and it should hopefully just go down. God damn. All Alright, now this strut has been in here for 23 years, so this pinch bolt right there is going to be very rusty. The best way to do this, I hope, is to spray some penetrating fluid and then put a screwdriver right there to kind of split these two parts out, and then hopefully it will give enough space to slide the strut up a little bit, so then we could just like move it out of the way this way. Oh, nice. This whole entire thing just comes out, so now the strut can just go that way. Ah! Look at this big leak. Putting the strut back was literally identical to how I took it off, but just in the reverse order. I started by securing it with the 3 bolts from the top, plugging it into the connector, and then the only thing I had to do was just put in those pinch bolts. By the way, if you guys are intimidated by this job, it's very simple. Try it out. If you've never worked on a car before, this could be one of the first things that you guys work on. Very simple, just a couple of bolts that you have to take out, bam, you saved yourself thousands. And even though the strut costed $700, at a dealership, this job would have costed me north of $2,000, so it's still saving a lot of money if you do it yourself. Now I have to jack up the spindle a little bit so I can connect the top of the control arm back into the spindle. Alright, time to change the sway bar links. This is such an easy job, I will show you how quick it is. It is currently 10:37, and this job will take me super quick. I work at 8 AM, so I need to make sure that I get this done quickly. Watch how fast I do it. I thought that this job is going to be easy, so I started by taking off the top bolt of the sway bar link off, and then just moved to the bottom. But the bottom one was definitely a lot harder than I thought it would be. I tried using a breaker bar, and it still wouldn't really budge. I even tried using a little bit of fire to loosen up the threads a little bit and maybe loosen up the nut by expanding the metal a little bit, and then this happened. This is such an easy job, I will show you how quick it is. Wow. So this happened. The bolt just sheared in half. I don't think I'm in that much trouble because I took a look at the new one and the inside of them is not threaded, which means I should be able to split this from the sway bar right now and kind of just slide it through this way and then take that bolt with the threads out, hopefully, I think. Then I'll need to go to Mercedes and then buy that specific bolt again, but what are we gonna do? Unfortunately, these things happen, and I'm really glad that it happened now when I'm learning about cars and learning how to work on them. Unfortunately, I spent about 3 hours figuring out a way of how to separate that sway bar from that bolt, and it seemed like everything I was doing just was not working. So I tried calling Mercedes-Benz to get another bolt and a nut, and apparently they don't sell them. I have to buy a brand new sway bar to get those bolts, which I'm not gonna do. Then I found a nut and bolt supply shop in Calgary. It's kind of far away from where I am, but I gave them a call, I gave them the dimensions of that bolt, and apparently they have that with a nut. I want to see if I can take the other side of the sway bar link off with that full bolt, so I can compare it to the one that they have to make sure that it's the correct thread pitch and a bunch of different sizes that I need to consider. The main reason why the bolt snapped in the middle right there was because of the sway bar. It's still holding quite a bit of tension on that middle part of the bolt, which is why it snapped right in the middle. So I'm gonna put a jack underneath here to elevate some of that stress and tension to maybe give a little bit of freedom for the bolt to actually spin out properly. I don't know if that will work out, but I simply just want a good example of like that one full bolt, and then I'll replace both of them at the bolt supply shop. See if it works out. I was definitely getting a bit anxious because I had to move back to Vancouver in 2 days and I haven't even started packing yet. So I needed to be very careful because I cannot afford damaging any more things. But it seemed like I was onto something and things were starting to look up again. We actually got this one! I'm so happy that at least we have one bolt. We can just cut the other one off and I think we should be okay. So let's go to that store. Now, when it comes to the new bolts, so I bought this new one right here, which looks a little bit different than this one. But apparently this one is actually more durable. And even though it doesn't have the threads all the way down, we don't need it to be because this part is going to be inside the sway bar link. The only thing I did have to make sure is that these are the exact same length, which they are, so it's gonna fit nicely. All right, let's cut the old bolt out. Make sure you wear all the protection when using this stuff. Yay! We cut it! Got the bolt out. Now we're just gonna clean up the spot really well and make sure to use some anti-seize next time so this doesn't happen. But I think that sway bar link was literally OEM from when the car was made, so it makes sense why it's so stuck. Things were finally looking up. I could finally see the finish line. I just knew that I had to fit these new sway bar links in and everything would be fine. And it was in no time I got the sway bar links on both sides. Pretty much took me 10 minutes once I figured out how to take them off. Now, the one thing that we have left to do is change the oil and then we can put her on the ground and go on a test drive. I like to change my filter and gaskets while the oil is draining, just for maximum efficiency, and it's really important that you do not miss the step. Before I put the wheels on and put everything else on, I'm going to start the car to make sure that there's no other leaks. And we can also check if the air suspension will start working. Let's check the oil first. Uh-oh. Perfect. Of course, when I have to leave the next day, I found nails in my tires, so we'll have to deal with that before we go on a 1,000-kilometer drive. But the air suspension works. For all my tire and wheel needs, I always take it to Urban X. They do a fully professional job here, and they didn't even charge me this time because I'm a reoccurring customer. Unfortunately, my rare AMG wheels are pitting a little bit, so there is a little bit of an air leak going through the side walls. So they're just sanding that down and then applying kind of like a putty to seal the tire to the rim a little bit better. And I made sure to balance and rotate all my wheels before my long trip. This car drives absolutely flawlessly now. After we fix that air suspension issue, the car can actually hold air for long periods of drives. And a little bit of a spoiler alert, I already made it to Vancouver. Unfortunately, I couldn't record it for you guys because I had a hectic move, but nothing went wrong except I got an airmatic light. It was fine at the beginning, and for about halfway mid through the drive, the airmatic light came on. But honestly, it doesn't seem like anything actually fully broke. The car still drives fine, it holds air in, and I suspect that the issue is actually in the air compressor because it's starting to make a little bit of a noise. But unfortunately, I'll have to fix that at a later date. In the meantime, the goal of this video was to make sure that this car actually made it to Vancouver for 1,000 kilometers, which it had flawlessly with absolutely no problem. For now, unfortunately, this car will have to chill a little bit because I've just started university and I got myself a daily driver, which is a new project, which I'll show you guys in the next video, and I got a new garage. That'll be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. Like, subscribe, and share, and I'll see you guys in the next one. And have yourself a wonderful day.